Welcome to the Mischief. I'm Valen, and this is Thin Air, a mod that also has compat with Create Air. This allows us to have a bit more of a challenge in the extreme Y levels of breathing, mining, going to other dimensions, and so on. And it's how you overcome these challenges that makes this interesting. So to be a bit clearer about what this mod offers, basically above Y level 125 and below Y level -3, at least that's what I was finding on my little mini-map icons. This is probably going to be 128 and 0, but either way, when you're above or below those amounts, your breathing will actually be challenged, and that is going to be in the form of some air bubbles. For example, when I start walking down here, you'll notice that I now have air bubbles on my hotbar. That represents that the air down here is not exactly that breathable. It's too thin for you to survive on it normally, and you're going to start losing your breath, just as if you were underwater, but a bit slower. But not to worry, once you're back up a few more levels, then you're in safety. And there are ways to avoid having to experience this, or at least delay them in some other ways, and there are ways to actually experience even much worse. Drowned are going to be especially dangerous. This comment like subscribe zombie drowned is going to be our example. You'll notice that it drops my air bubbles quite quickly. Just a couple hits and I'm pretty much out of air. So they do become that much more vicious when experiencing them out in the wild. You don't want to get hit by them. The Nether actually is in its entirety pretty bad. That's going to be a slow loss of your air supply, just as you were seeing before, but it doesn't appear to work in this small radius that you're seeing here around this portal. This allows a breathable zone when you first come into the Nether. But beyond that, it's going to be a bit more challenging, and you'll start suffering some air loss as you're exploring around. So you're going to need to come prepared, or at least have something in mind in order to offset that. Now, on top of having some breathing difficulties, being in the end is going to be just as if you were underwater. You will have a rapid loss of air supply because there isn't any here. It's just a big void. So how on earth can I find out if I'm in one of these zones while I'm exploring? Well, besides the air bubble showing up on your hotbar, and then suddenly you're going to panic, you can have a lantern. This one here that's sitting beside me is the lantern I'm talking about. It's called a safety lantern. It's made with a redstone torch and copper ingots. Now you'll notice that in my inventory it's green, and if I go exploring down here, that it has changed into a yellow. It does so on my hotbar, and if I place this down, it will be yellow there, but if I place it up on an area where the air is safe, it actually turns green. This represents the dangers of the air down below. So if you're in the green, you're pretty much in breathable air, which is mostly the mid-Y levels of the overworld. If you're in yellow, then you're going to get slow air loss, which is going to be experienced in the Nether, and the extreme Y levels at the high end and the low end of the world. Red is going to be pretty much underwater or in the void of the end, which is extremely fast air loss. And then there's a special reading of no air loss is going to happen, but you won't actually replenish your air either, and that's in the presence of any kind of soul fires, whether it be a campfire, a soul torch, lantern, or any of the soil or sand being lit. If you have one of these nearby, it will kind of just stop air loss. And this will work down below as well, so it'll change these torches from yellow to blue, and that's just in an area around this torch. It's not specifically just that one torch, or it's not going to change the entire area or that level or something. So there are a lot of protections that you can equip yourself with to keep yourself safe from the loss of air, starting with a respirator. That's just a bit of paper, string, and some charcoal. Putting this on your Curios slot in the top left here, which that's the Curios mod that adds that in. It's then displayed on my person, and it will slowly lose durability over time. And you'll have this lovely little, headset on, if you will, that will just protect you from any kind of air loss environments. And it's really handy to have one of these things around. Not too difficult to make. And yes, you can just keep that on in a safe zone as well, and it won't lose durability unless you're actually in a toxic environment. But just be careful when that runs out because, well, if you're very deep into something like the Nether, it runs out and you don't have anything else to replace it with, then you're probably going to die before you can get back to a safe zone unless you've been making safe zones. Speaking of travel, let's get into the air bladders. There's a regular one, which is just some leather, string, and then there's the reinforced one, which has 6 times the durability, or space, as one might assume, which is just an air bladder with a netherite ingot. So I'm sure you noticed that my air bubbles are slowly diminishing. How the air bladder works is basically just to top it up as if you're drinking a bottle of something to replenish yourself with. So if I just drink a little bit of this, and then it replenishes my air supply, and the durability of the air bladder goes down. Now you might think, okay, well, what happens once it's empty? In order to replenish it, you need to be in a safe zone, is an example here with the green light, and then you just right-click, and you're doing the reverse. Just by holding it, you can refill this air bladder. Same thing with the reinforced one, which has 6 times the space of the original. Now there are other methods of actually protecting yourself, and that's with a bottle of Soulfire. This requires some sort of soul sand or soil, plus charcoal or coal, and a bit of glass, or 3 glass bottles, and you'll get 3 bottles of it. Now, you don't drink this one in this case. You just right-click, it instantly breaks and gives you a quick breath refresh of your entire air supply that may or may not be running out. In this case, I'm just about to start taking suffocation damage, so if I crack one of these bottles open, instantly it replenishes everything that I have there. So it is another way that instantly you can save yourself from having some asphyxiation problems. Now, as I mentioned before, any of the different soul variants will protect you from having any kind of issue. So you'll notice that my air supply was dropping. I put one of these torches down and it will just stop where it is. The air supply no longer diminishes, but it won't actually increase either unless you have some other way of obtaining air, whether it be from like a bottle of Soulfire, air bladder, or etc. Now, it works the same thing with a soul campfire, also works the same with a soul lantern. Also, you could just go really cheap and use either soul soil or soul sand, and you just light them and it has the same effect. It's just like about, I don't know, think about maybe 6 block radius or so-ish to give you an idea of about how far this will give you an air stop protection. And taking my soul torch and putting it up here in this green zone where I know that I can breathe normally, it's still going to protect you from air, but it will also stop it from actually replenishing automatically. So you might need to break it in an area like this just to be extra safe, and then you can do that to maintain it, and it should stop your air from dropping. I'm going to say your #1 method of actually protecting yourself from having any kind of air problems is going to be one of these. And that is a potion of free breathing. Previously labeled as a potion of water breathing, it's now potion of free breathing, which still requires the same exact ingredients, but it will allow you to actually breathe for the appropriate amount of time, underwater, in the void, in the nether, down below, really high in the atmosphere, etc. Of course, it's always just for a limited time. Now, at the beginning of the video, I mentioned something about the Create compat, and that is the Create Air mod, which allows a compatibility with the Thin Air mod. That means that the diving helmets and the back tanks, when filled with air and worn, you then have protection for a certain amount of time when underwater, in the void, in the nether, any of those different areas. As you can see, I've got a timer down on the bottom right there that pretty much lets me know that I have a good amount of time before I need to worry about this. And this does work in the nether, down below, and up above as well. If you're not already familiar with how to actually charge one of these back tanks, because they are made with a few simple ingredients, you just really need some kind of rotational force. I've cranked it up to its maximum for this single water wheel. You can even add more if you really wanted to. But just to give you an idea, that alone is enough to actually start charging it. It'll take some time, but it will give it a bunch of air, and then you can take that with you on your way. You could always have little charging stations, you know, if you're really exploring different areas, and bring some of these materials along with you. But if you're in some place like the nether, just make sure that it's appropriate and it doesn't rely on something like water. So as you can see here, I'm currently in the nether with myself wearing some netherite outfit. If I take the helmet off, then the bubbles come back and I start slowly losing my air due to being in the nether itself. Putting the helmet back on, I then can replenish that air and I'm good to go. And just a bonus as part of this mod, if you place down a regular vanilla torch and you right click it, it will turn into a variant version that adds extra particles. This can be extremely useful for finding the specific way back up and out of your caving explorations. Simply right click again and you can shut it off. So there you have it, the Thin Air mod with Create Air Compat. There's going to be a lot of information in the description below if you want to know what different mods you need to have installed for this to actually all work. It does also say so on the mod pages. And if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give a like, comment, subscribe. Don't be afraid to stop by on Twitch, as well as our Mischief of Mice 2 channel, which we end up putting most of our live videos up on. And until next time, folks, I'll see ya.